Hello guys, welcome back. So today you're going to be joining me on my desktop. Just in the beginning, don't worry, we'll get into the benchmarks straight away, but I'll just give you some basic details of my R9 290. So as you can see, we've got tech power up, we're based on the Hawaii architecture. We've got 4 GB of GDDR5 with a GPU clock of 1000 MHz right on the dot and a memory clock of 1300 MHz. So as you can see, the drive is a little bit outdated, doesn't really affect things too much. Let's get right into it. Okay, so we'll use this first section just to explain exactly how I'm going to be performing my tests today. Obviously, my tests might not be perfectly accurate. I am going to keep them as consistent as possible. So we're going to be starting off at 1080p at the very lowest settings. So bear in mind, throughout of all of these tests, I'm going to be using presets. I'm not going to adjust anything. I will let you know that I am using 2x MSAA through all of the tests just to sharpen up the edges that tiny little bit, because I do think the game looks really nasty without no anti-aliasing at all. So I'd just like to mention that for all of these tests, all the frame rates, all the settings tests I do, there will be a little box, well, quite a big box at the top of the screen with the percentile figures in there. So obviously you can pause the video, you can refer to it if you would like. I am not going to be keeping these clips too long as I've got quite a lot of tests to go through. I think there's 3 different resolutions I'm testing. I'm going to be doing 1080p, 900p and 720p, only because that suits most people best, especially with this graphics card. It probably could play this game at certain settings at 1440p, however my monitor only supports 1080p, so that's what we are sticking with. So in order for me to get these figures, don't worry, I've not just drove around aimlessly. I have set a direct route which you will see on the screen throughout the whole of this video, and it will get quite boring. We want to keep this as accurate as possible, especially in the most real life scenario. So as you can see, I just take the route from the start house and I head towards the airstrip, and then I just follow that. As you'll see, it'll change a little bit. The figures that you are seeing on the screen aren't the figures that I am using, only because the FPS is mildly impacted by the AMD recording software that I am doing. So the gameplay is just for gameplay purposes, and it's not really a true representation of the FPS I am getting, as I am getting a bit of a FPS hit. However, if you're planning on getting this card and doing some recording at 1080p using the AMD software, then I guess then it is realistic. Just so we're clear, I'm doing a real life test, I'm sticking to a similar route, and I'm trying to keep it as fair as possible. So, moving on to the 1080p low preset, the game actually does look a little bit better than it does on lowest. Obviously it should do, and it performs great still. So as stated before, as you can see, I'm doing the same route just to keep things nice and consistent. So one thing I would like to mention is that if you noticed in the last clip that the 1% lows and the 0.1% lows were quite low, like awfully low, it was because of the game bar popping up. I have since deactivated that, but just to let you know, the game wasn't that stuttery at all. At 1080p low settings, we're getting a solid 93.5 average FPS, a 1% low of 63.9, and a 0.1% of 29.7. At these settings, this game is more than playable, and I know what you'll be thinking. Well, if the game is playable at 1080p, more than playable in fact, why are you doing a 900p test? Why are you doing a 720p test? Okay, so thanks for asking. I am simply doing all of these tests almost as an archive. I mean, I am interested. I'm so interested in numbers and, FPS and benchmarks that, yes, I know this card runs this game at 1080p. As you can see, there'd be no reason really to play it at 900p or 720p. However, some people might have this card and only have a 900p monitor or a 720p monitor. I know that's very unlikely, but it definitely could be an option. These tests are mainly just as a bit of a database, just an archive, because eventually the R9 290 will be forgotten about. Maybe there'll be some people out there thinking, you know what, actually, let's go and see how the R9 290 performs in Forza Horizon 5, even though at this point Forza Horizon 27 could be out. Anyway, not going to ramble on, performs great, and we'll just move on. So, moving on to the medium preset. As you can see, the graphics look so much better, the quality looks great. However, there's not much of a performance loss, so you know what, this card is already doing great in my opinion, and I think it's going to go quite a long way. The average FPS I got from the medium test was 88.6, a 1% low of 55.8, and a 0.1% low of 17.3. As you can see, the game looks great. Even whilst recording on the screen you can see a solid 80 FPS. That's worst case scenario. It's only going to be better if you was to have this card yourself. And like I said, I'm really impressed. I could easily play this game at medium settings. However, you can already see that there's plenty of room for this card to get them higher settings and just overall have a nice experience with Forza Horizon 5. So this is where already I'm going to say these clips are going to get a lot shorter now. If you do need to pause the video at any point, if you need to see a specific setting at a specific resolution, you can just go to that part of the video and just see exactly how this card performs. Like I said, it's basically just an archive, it's a database, and that's how I want this channel to be. I'm going to be doing a lot more tests like this. It did take quite a while, but I enjoyed it, so we're going to keep it going. Moving on to the high preset. As you can see by the graph, there's not much to say except well done. I mean, like I keep saying, this is a 9-year-old card. This game came out not even a year ago, and it's just running at 1080p high settings, 72 average FPS. This game doesn't even need 60 FPS in my opinion. I found that this game ran quite smoothly at 40, 45 FPS. You know, 50 FPS would be perfect. 60, obviously, it is a target number, so people want to meet that. But as you can see, high settings, MSAA 2 times. You could even just play this game, high settings, put on anti-aliasing or crank up the MSAA and get a solid 60 FPS. So yeah, a 72.1 average FPS, a 1% low of 36.6, and a 0.1% of 28.8. So one thing I will just quickly touch up on is you'll notice these 0.1% lows are a bit mad, a bit all over the place. I would just like to know that, you know, we're on higher settings and the 0.1% low is now higher than what it has been in the past. It's not noticeable at all. I've not noticed any stuttering, any frame rate. It's mainly if something pops up, the game bar may affect it, and that's about it. Like I said, this game looks stunning at high settings, cannot complain whatsoever. Moving on to the Ultra preset. As you can see, we'll just get straight into the statistics and I'll explain exactly how I think the game felt and what we could do maybe to find a better balance. So, average FPS 39.6. Like I stated earlier, this game can run smoothly, or at least in my opinion, at 45 to 50 FPS. I will also note that this video is recorded at 60 frames per second, so it might look a bit choppy simply because it's not reaching the 60 FPS mark. So yeah, we've got an average FPS of 39.6, a 1% low of 28.8, and a 0.1% low of 23.4. As you can see, them percentile figures are quite tightly spread. Personally, I think this game at these settings is playable. However, I would go into that Ultra preset, I'll drop a couple of settings, have a little play about with it, and just try and hit 45 to 50 FPS. It'll be easily possible, and the game will still look as stunning as you can see here. This game looks absolutely amazing, and this card is still surprising me. I know 1080p Ultra, 40 FPS. Like I said, I could argue and say this is playable. I didn't mind it at all, and it's running these settings once again on a 9-year-old card. Absolutely great. Anyway, let's move on to the extreme settings. Let's see how that fares. Okay, so moving on to the 1080p extreme test. You can already see the average FPS up there at 27.4. We've got a 1% low of 18.8 and a 0.1% low of 12.6. Okay, so this is where I will admit defeat with this card. It simply just didn't play smooth whatsoever. I mean, it gave it a good go. It nearly hit 30 FPS, but personally I don't even think 30 FPS in this game is playable. That's a bit of an unfortunate one. However, the visuals do look great, and like I said, once again, I am so pleased with how well this card has performed. I mean, I didn't test it myself personally, but probably could argue and say you could start off with the extreme preset, maybe play around with a few of the settings, and just try and hit 30 FPS or just over if you are happy to play at 30 FPS. Like I said, personally, I like to be at somewhere around 45 to 50, and the more the merrier, of course. So I did mention that this Forza Horizon 5 benchmark test is going to be an in-depth video explaining and showing all of the settings, all of the resolutions. So I've had a change of heart. I have still got all the recordings for the 900p tests and the 720p tests. However, personally, I think this video is getting too long already and we're only at the 1080p tests. I don't want this to be, you know, a 20-25 minute long video. I'd rather it be around a 10 to 12 minute mark. So I've decided I'm just going to do the 900p test as a separate video, and I'm going to do the same with the 720p. So I'm just going to keep this video set to the 1080p benchmarks, simply because this is what this card fits the most. You've seen how well this card performs at 1080p. It's only going to perform better at 900p and 720p. Like I said, I am still serious about using my channel as an archive, as a database for these benchmarks. So I will make a video based on the 900p and the 720p benchmarks, so you can obviously go and view them when they are available. I don't know when them videos will be up, however, I will link the videos in this description when they are available to watch. I'll just do a quick conclusion. Personally, I think this is a great 1080p card for Forza Horizon. You could easily play this game at ultra, low some of the settings, some of the less important settings, or just set it at high 1080p, turn up the MSAA, or even just have MSAA on at 2 times and then put on the FXAA and just have a nice, smooth, solid, pretty experience. This card has surprised me. I think it's great. Definitely going to be keeping hold of it and doing some more benchmarks. So if you are interested in other games, please let me know which games you'd like to see, and I'll try and make that happen. I do already have games in my library which I will be making benchmark tests very similar to this. So if you are interested, stick around, maybe even subscribe if you want to see more videos, and thank you for watching. Take care and goodbye.